Hi guys, Paul here. Welcome back to the Anfield Review. Hope you're all keeping well. Time to discuss all things Ryan Gravenberch. He's sitting there thinking, "Oh, we have 24,000 problems at the club right now, and Ryan Gravenberch isn't one of them." Well, today we're going to see. We're going to see. Maybe I'll put another problem on the list for us. Look, the sort of juxtaposition we have really with regards to Ryan Gravenberch is the fact that I'm a little bit confused as to what he's there to do, fundamentally. And I'm not sure whether I'm confused because we have other players trying to do the same thing or a different version of the same thing, or I'm hoping or wanting him to do something else that's really not what he wants to do, or he has the skill sets to do. I don't know. So let's try and unpack, unravel, unbox really what Ryan Gravenberch is there to do, I think, and also what he's capable of doing as well, and also what it feels like he wants to do. He's got a new 6 year contract. Get that. That means he's there for the future, ultimately, by hook or crook, at least on the short term. When I look at Ryan Gravenberch play, technically he's somebody who wants to pick the ball up on the half turn and drive forward. So really, he's somebody that really brings the ball out in transition. He's not a defensive midfielder, as in, look, Fabinho had the ability to do that. But fundamentally, he was a defensive midfielder at heart. One, I suppose comparing him to Fabinho is harsh because Fabinho was one of the world's best in his position. But I think we have to really compare him to certain players, both past and present, to really gain a feel for really what he does and doesn't bring to the table. Ultimately, when you compare him to Fabinho, he doesn't have the defensive mindset. Fabinho, he doesn't read the game from a defensive perspective like Fabinho did. He doesn't tackle like Fabinho. He doesn't have the engine like Fabinho. And so purely from it, and he doesn't really have the positional sense of a defensive midfielder either. So from those elements, he doesn't tick the defensive midfielder box. From a stylistic holding midfielder perspective, look, a holding midfielder and a defensive midfielder are completely different. I know in a very technical team, you could sit there and say, well, teams like Real Madrid didn't necessarily have a Fabinho. Pardon me. Pardon me. Sorry. Sincere apologies. I couldn't stop it. Lost my train of thought completely now, haven't I, on that front? Teams like Real Madrid don't necessarily always have an out and out defensive midfielder in terms of your Fabinhos of the world. No, I get that, but they play in a completely different league, which is a lot slower in terms of pace and it's a lot more intricate in terms of skill. And they usually have usually not always, they usually have a very silky midfielder, Modric or an Alonso, the likes that really sort of dictates the play. When you look at Liverpool's makeup of their midfield, fundamental apart from Gerrard, obviously at the period where we were blessed to have Gerrard, Alonso, and Mascherano, but equally when we had that, we had Mascherano, who was an out and out DM, a full on one of the world's best DMs. You could also make a very good case that no, Alonso was definitely not there for that. Alonso's your controlling midfielder that sprays the passes, so he was very much a full on dictator in of the play and possession for the game. And Gerrard had the ability to do what your Soblazais and your Gravenberches want to do, but a lot better because he had better physical attributes and better skill sets. And so Gerrard could pick the ball in the half turn, drive forward. He was quicker, stronger, and far more skillful than look. He's one of the world's best. So that's no slight on them. Jesus, the very fact. I mean, comparing them against them, you can say, "Oh, that's really unfair." No, I'm just saying it to really highlight. I'm trying to understand really with Ryan Gravenberch, how do we use him that one is best for the team? Because that's always where I come from, is always where is best for the team. He may well shine phenomenally well into someone else's system. And last year, he did perform well last year, but not necessarily from a defensive midfielder perspective. He played in a deeper line in position to sort of half read the game. So I wouldn't say, he wasn't the second coming of Fabinho or you have Mascherano in terms of tackles or necessarily protecting the defense phenomenally well. I'd say he did a he, I'm trying to put it in a way that he did a very good job, but at no point did you ever feel it was the permanent solution to that problem. Does that mean I'm trying to give him his flowers was also recognised, and he would be the first to say, like the very fact that I think probably in the off season he said he wanted to play much further forward, and we saw that in the first 6 games of this season where he was scoring crucial goals at the time. He's somebody that fundamentally wants to get the ball in the half turn, drive forward, and shoot. That's really what he wants to do, and mostly that's where his best skill sets lie. Last year, we played in a much deeper role. It helped the team a lot more. The start of this season, his goals were vital because he scored some very crucial goals for us and played really well in the first 6 games. It's just petered off completely. Now we've ended up in a position where we're not getting last year's version of him, which I still don't think was the solution to the defensive midfield situation. But I'm not convinced Slot even sees the defensive midfielder as top priority, even though for me it's above everything else because we're way too exposed. The midfield isn't athletic enough. The midfield doesn't have the defensive capability in terms of tackling, in terms of reading the game to protect the defense. We don't have the physical attributes either to match teams. And so while Slot may not necessarily put a huge stock on a defensive midfielder, it's what's blatantly obvious to pretty much everybody else that's watching the game. And so the truth will reveal itself in the summer as to really whether he's seeing what we're seeing. Because from what I can see, almost every single person can see there's a whopping great need for us to have a defensive midfielder, in our team to protect the defense, to enable players like Wirtz to then just focus on going forward. It wouldn't solve all the problems. Believe me, we've got creative problems on the wings, etc. as well. I mean, we've got a situation in terms of can we keep Isak fit enough next year until Ikateki comes back? We've got firefighting. I'm going to work with me on this one. But the situation with Ryan Gravenberch, for me, just is with this midfield being a major issue for us. And it wasn't until it was an issue, so backtrack. It was an issue in terms of, for me, not necessarily for the club, but for me personally, I've been waiting for us to get the next Fabinho. Well, look, we went for Casado, so we went for Casado, didn't get him. So we obviously recognised that we needed to replace a new Fabinho. Then we went for Zubamendi. That's obviously not the same player as a Casado. More of a controlling midfielder than a defensive midfielder per se. Because he's not Zubamendi in no way is Casado. Completely different. We didn't get either of them, and then so we haven't actually got anybody at the moment. So we're stuck in a position where we've got Gravenberch not playing as deep as last year, but then after the first 6 games, not playing as well as last year. But equally, he doesn't really want to play that position anymore. But then equally, nobody else was playing that position. And when Endo was fit, he never wanted to play him in as a defensive midfielder, which says to me, Slot just doesn't really put an emphasis or really fully recognise one of the reasons we have major problems is the fitness and the athleticism of our midfield and the fact that we don't have anybody that really has a mindset to really defend or have the athletic capabilities to defend or the mindset to defend or the tactical nous to defend. And frankly, most of them are missing all of those elements. It's just a reality, isn't it? And so where does this leave us with Gravenberch? Well, this is the question, isn't it? This is the question with Gravenberch. It's not so much his ability. It's just like a lot of situations for Liverpool at the moment. Where is Gravenberch meant to be playing for us? If you have a defensive midfielder, you can make an argument that you then put the two in front of that defensive midfielder being Gravenberch and Szoboszlai. Okay, I get that. If you don't have a defensive midfielder, then you can't have a midfield of just Gravenberch and Szoboszlai because we're just widely exposed. You can't have a midfield of Gravenberch and McAllister because we're equally widely exposed. And Soboslai really isn't a defensive midfielder either. So it feels like we've got essentially three, three attacking midfielders, but to all different extents. As in, Gravenberch wants to get the ball in midfield and drive forward. Soboslai pretty much spends his life doing that. And McAllister's really his best further forward, as in he gets the ball and just after the halfway line goes forward, great at shooting, great for sort of contributing to goals. But let's be honest, how many times does he get booked? How many times does Gravenberch get booked? How many times, sometimes like to a lesser extent, but how many times do those two get booked when we're in transition or when we're hit on the break? All the time, because they don't have the pace to track back. They don't read the game very well. They don't have a tactical defensive mindset to either, let's just say one goes forward, that one drops back to cover. Never happens. Why do you think we're always so exposed in the break? Because it's almost like when one goes forward, they all want to go forward, and then nobody's really dropping back to cover. So if something like goes forward, if you've got one, at least one of them back there, but the problem is that let's just say McAllister drops back, and the other two go forward. Well, anybody can run past McAllister. You're on a counter attack. So let's just say, okay, well, McAllister stays further forward. Gravenberch drops back a bit. Well, in all fairness, Gravenberch isn't that fast either. I mean, I'm not saying he's slow, but he's not exactly the fastest person in the world, when it comes to that position. And so I'm a little bit confused as to really how we're going to get the best out of all of these players. Because at the moment, it feels like Szoboszlai has been a man inspired this year. It's almost like he's just grabbed the ball and gone, I'm gonna try and do this on my own if necessary, if nobody else is going to help me. And he sort of has. But I don't know whether that's a tactical genius or just Szoboszlai just being inspired and just saying, well, somebody's got to keep this ship sailing. So I'm going to be the captain. And frankly, he has been. You can't argue with the fact he's when people say I compare it to Gerrard, he's definitely had those Gerrard, not all season, he's nowhere near Gerrard's level, but equally he's definitely had those Gerrard moments this year where he's just grabbed the ball and gone on. Do you know what? To hell with this, I'm going to go and sort this out. And sometimes that's worked out, and sometimes it hasn't. He's gone off, on attack and emptied the midfield, and we've been caught in the break and let it go. So look, Gerrard was not immune. He's a phenomenal player. We love him to death. Absolute genius. Sort of carrying us to what he did. But equally, there was times when he would do the same. Would try and be the only man in show. To really sort of rescue everything. And when heavy is the head that wears the crown, isn't it? In terms of those moments when you try to really go that extra mile, and sometimes it'll pay off, and you've been phenomenal. Other times you'll come a cropper on that front. But trying to really unpack and unbox what we do with Gravenberch is trying to really it's trying to square the circle of the midfield, isn't it? It really is, without knowing how best to get. We've got so many pieces of the jigsaw. We've got so many different pieces of the chessboard, trying to work out how best to get the best end result ultimately. Because look, it's like trying to bake a cake. You need certain ingredients to make the cake, and you need certain ingredients to make a world-class cake. And in this situation, we've got a whole concoction of ingredients, but I'm just not sure we've got the right mix of ingredients to make the best cake. And obviously, in some cases, we're just completely missing ingredients, which is why the cake's sort of half baked. If you want to put it that way, well, maybe not even that. It's still the mixture in the bowl, isn't it? Really, if we put it on this year, I think I'm giving us way too much credit to say it's even half baked. I'm generally a little bit. I mean, it'd be great to hear your thoughts, guys, in terms of where do we play Gravenberch when we've already got attacking midfielders like Szoboszlai and McAllister. I do think, as done with the video earlier, I do generally feel that part of this question could be answered with where if McAllister leaves, and look, I'm just saying he's been a phenomenal servant, and at 27, I wish he was still at the levels he used to be. But it's one of those that we've got to try and work out a solution to the midfield, and keeping all three of them in midfield isn't the solution because they're not suddenly all going to become athletes, and we need at least one major full-on athlete in midfield, fast, strong, quick. We don't need any more technical players, and we don't need any more players that drive the ball forward. The solution to Liverpool right now wouldn't be to have an Alonso or Thiago in our midfield. It really wouldn't. The solution to Liverpool's midfield at the moment is you need a Fabinho or Mascherano or a Milner. That's you badly need that in the midfield. There's just no balance to the midfield. And that's the whole thing with the team in general. There just isn't a right there. You haven't got enough. We haven't got enough wingers. When we have, Gakpo's not really a winger. Yeah, obviously Mo's old now, bless him. But he's not carrying the speed attributes that he used to do. We're hesitant to play Rio because of his age. We've got two strikers that play completely different to what we've just had for the last 10 years. They're more, Isak is more akin to an old school striker like an Owen and a Torres, and he wants to run through onto the ball and put it into the net, which is I got no problem with. I've thoroughly enjoyed peak Torres and peak Owen, peak Fowler and all these things. But then you need to have the person in midfield that has the ability to actually have the vision and be able to play the pass. Not convinced we got that person either. I don't think that's in the skill set of Gravenberch or really McAllister either. Yeah, there's more questions than answers, isn't it? The person that we need to have in midfield, we need to have one that can get the best out of the strikers. We need to have one that can really help the defense. They need to have the athletic attributes as well. We need the whole team to come up 54 levels in terms of mindset and fitness. We need the manager to come up about. I mean, if he does stay, let's just say he's operating a 2 out of 10 this year. He needs to be an 8 out of 10 next year. And we just have to find a way of really understanding what we need an honest appraisal of where we're at now. I think too often if we're coming out saying, I think it's in the Man United game where Slot came out and said, "Oh, he felt we played pretty well in the first half and we were in control." And it's like, no, we weren't. Like there isn't one person alive that watched that first half. I didn't think it was abject and awful by us. So it's like, I mean, I understand sometimes you can be way too close to a position to really give a proper assessment. But I do feel sometimes like, please tell me that was just more raw emotion coming out and not a tactical assessment of what you're seeing. Because we're all seeing that first half was absolutely horrible, abject and awful. And we could have been 3 or 4-0 down. And you're turning around and saying that almost that we were the better team. It's like, we couldn't be looking at two different games further apart. It's almost like every pundit and every supporter is seeing just how badly we are in that first half, and you're seeing a completely different scenario. And it's like, wow, if that is generally your view, then that really worries me about everything else. I mean, if that's how you view that first half, then that if any Liverpool supporter isn't worried then about judgment on every other things from players to tactics to subs to fitness to mindset, then you should be, because that's when something as blatantly as obvious. You don't have to come out and lambast the players, but don't come out and say something that's blatantly not even remotely close. It just makes yourself look silly, isn't it? At the end of the day, it makes you look silly, makes the club look silly. There's just no need to. Don't say anything about the first half if you don't want to. If you thought it was that bad and you wanted to defend the team, and find some way of getting around it. But equally, don't come out and say that. As I say, guys, when it comes to Gravenberch, it is just a very tricky situation because the setup of the team and what the team needs and what he wants to do and where he's best to play, they're all fighting against each other, aren't they, really, at the moment? And I don't know. We've given him a 6-year contract, but I don't know how. Maybe with an Adam Wharton in midfield, although I don't necessarily think I like Adam Wharton and I like Elliot Anderson, and I've been of the viewpoint that I would take either of them would be a massive improvement on our midfield, and it generally would be. But if we had, if we're lucky enough, look, I'll worry about it if we get it. We've still got to get one of them, and that's a big if, given the competition we're going to be up against. But if we do get one of them, it'll be interesting to see whether that's enough and how we play Gravenberch and Soboslai around that. So great to hear your thoughts, guys. I thought it'd be an interesting topic to really discuss Gravenberch because I think that most people would widely say he's one of our better players last year in terms of, for me, McAllister was probably player of the season. Gravenberch probably second. Well, no, Mo's player of the season last season. McAllister second, Gravenberch third. For me, some people would have Gravenberch probably second behind Mo, last season. So, yeah, it'd be great to hear your thoughts, really, where you see the sort of future of Gravenberch, because ultimately he's got a 6-year contract, so he isn't going anywhere anytime soon, unless we randomly decide to cash in. But then equally, he would be in demand, but I'm not sure what level of demand there would be for him at the moment, because we've only had one season and he did a specific job for us more than sort of becoming a global superstar in one hit. But it's a very intriguing one. With McAllister, you can see what he brings, but his fitness and his legs have just gone. And I just don't see a world in which they can come back. So he either has to play an attacking midfielder position, which is where Vert's basically has to play. So further forward, a lot further forward. But then equally to do that, then it raises questions of where you put Verts and all these different other elements. Whereas with Gravenberch, I think you can play him and Soboslai in the midfield, but there's just a big onus on who you get next to play with them, because that person is going to have to be the water carrier and is going to have to do a heck of a lot of the work and be a supreme athlete and have a real defensive mindset. I don't think having a technical person, no, that's not going to be needed. I don't think having necessarily another attacking person, that's really not needed, because that just leaves us in the same boat as what we're in now. So, yeah, it'd be interesting times to see just what the mindset, tactics, and approach will be this summer as to the signings and who we get, and really see if we can solve some of these problems. Great to hear your thoughts, guys. Speak to you more soon. Take care.